Seches Nedarim Daf Nun Gimel finishes the sixth parak of the Masechta. It contains 3 Mishnayos and 4 main topics, all around when you say something, what's included as far as Seches Nedarim. So if you mention something, does that include what comes out of it, juice that comes out of it? That's one topic. Another is, what if there is an additional name to that juice that comes out of it, or anything else that's similar but has an additional name to it? How does that change the halacha? Then the Gemara will speak about if you have something that's within the category of a larger thing, what are those things, and where there is a difference between plural and singular. If you use one of those two phrases, what's included and what's not. So let's begin. First, we're discussing what comes out of something else. So the Mishnah brings 3 opinions, and it's discussing 2 cases. It's discussing dates and date honey, and something called setonios, which are winter grapes. Those are grapes that are left on the vine throughout the entire fall, and they become hard and impossible to eat, but they're used to make vinegar. So the vinegar that's made from that is called chometz setonios. So here the question is, the honey that comes out of the dates is called date honey. The vinegar that comes out of sesonios is called sesonios vinegar. So the name of the original fruit is included in the name of the juice. So when you say just the dates, does that refer to both of them or not? If we say just sesonios, does that refer to the fruit and the grape and the vinegar or not? So Rabbi Yehuda ben Meir says it refers to both of them, and therefore both of them are aser. Now there are 2 other opinions here. The Tanna Kama says somebody who makes a neder on the dates does not aser the date honey. Somebody who makes a neder on tesonios does not aser the vinegar. And the Chachamim just say that they permit it. They argue on Rabbi Yehuda. So those 2 opinions sound like they're the same. They both seem to say that when you that even though the name is on the product that comes out and bears the name of the fruit, still you would not aser it. So the Gemara explains that they don't agree exactly. They agree in the case of the dates and the date honey, because we have a brisa that says that as long as the fruit and the product are both edible, so when you say you want to make a neder on one, then you aser what comes out of it. And if you say you want to make a neder on the honey, let's say, then you aser the fruit. Both of them are included because they both bear the same name. However, what happens in the case of the grapes that you make vinegar out of? Those grapes are not edible. So if somebody makes a neder on the grapes, does he mean to aser the grapes, or does he only mean to aser the vinegar that comes out of the grapes, because that's the only useful thing that's relevant to these winter grapes? So Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says the grapes themselves are mutter. That is the opinion of the 3rd shita, the Chachamim, in the Mishnah. When they said that it's mutter, they meant the grapes themselves are mutter, because the only thing you're asering is the vinegar. You're not meaning to aser anything else. However, the Tanna Kama disagreed, and Tanna Kama said no. You meant to aser the grapes. Even though the grapes aren't edible, you said you're asering the grapes, you're asering the grapes. The vinegar that comes out of it is not included. He holds those are mutter because you didn't mean to aser those, you meant to aser the grapes, and the fact that it has the name of the grape is on the vinegar, it's called sesonios vinegar, that does not make it aser, and therefore the grapes are aser and the other part, and the vinegar is mutter. The 3rd opinion says the other way, like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, like we said earlier, because you can't aser the grapes themselves because they're not edible, the isser here is going only on the vinegar and not on anything else. All right, now we get to our next Mishnah. This next Mishnah talks about when you have an additional name on something. So, for example, if somebody makes an isser on wine, so wine generally refers to grape wine. What about apple wine? So because there's an additional term, it's not just called wine, it's called apple wine, so it's not included in the isser of wine. Now, what about oil? So oil generally refers to olive oil. It does not refer to sesame oil, because sesame oil has an additional name and has to be called sesame oil. Somebody says honey, so it means regular honey. It doesn't mean date honey because it has an additional name. Somebody says vinegar, he means regular vinegar. He does not mean sesonios vinegar. Somebody says leek, he means regular leek. He doesn't mean kaplutos, which are leek heads or a larger leek that have a different name. Somebody says vegetables, he means garden vegetables, vegetables which grow in the garden, cultivated vegetables that you get, cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever it is. He doesn't mean field vegetables, which are wild vegetables that grow wild in the field. Those are called field vegetables and have a different name. All right, the Gemara has 2 discussions here. The Gemara first of all wants to know, what is the standard oil? The Mishnah seems to say the standard oil is olive oil, and sesame oil is extra, and therefore when someone says oil, he means olive oil. Says the Gemara, depends where you are. In Eretz Yisrael, that's the case. However, in Bavel, the standard oil is sesame oil, and therefore olive oil is the oil that has the extra name, and if somebody just says oil, he refers to sesame oil, not olive oil. What would be in a place where they use both olive oil and sesame oil. Both are common to use. So there the halacha is someone just as oil asks both of them. The Gemara asks, that's pashut, of course. The Gemara says, you may think you should follow the rove, you should go with the majority. And the answer is no, you don't go with the majority. You're not sure which one he's referring to, and therefore you have to go l'chumra and aser both of them. The Gemara's second discussion is about vegetables. So we had said that standard term vegetables refers to garden vegetables and not field vegetables. Those have an extra name. They're called field vegetables. The Gemara says during Shemitah, it's the other way around. There are no garden vegetables because you cannot cultivate a garden during Shemitah. The only vegetables people have to eat are field vegetables, and therefore if somebody says vegetables, generally he means field vegetables. Now the Gemara points out that Rabbi Avos and Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, that depends if you have imports or not. In a place where you have imports during Shemitah, or according to an opinion that you have imported vegetables during Shemitah, those imported vegetables are garden vegetables, and that's the standard. That's what people eat. And therefore when someone says vegetables, he means garden vegetables and not field vegetables even during Shemitah. The Gemara points out it's on the Chalakas Tanaim if you're allowed to import vegetables at any time, certainly during Shemitah, and there is an opinion that holds you cannot import them. Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel says that you can import vegetables. What is the reason that, why would it what's the tzad that should ever be aser? So Gemara explains that Rabbi Yirmiyah says because when you bring vegetables in, it comes with clumps of earth, and earth that comes from plus arts is tamei. We're afraid that it's part of a grave, and therefore they're forbidden. All right, now we get to the last Mishnah in the parak, and the Mishnah discusses what happens when you have something which is a subcategory or part of a larger category. So if you mention the larger category, you also include the subcategory, but you mention the subcategory, you don't include the larger category. So for example, let's see what the Mishnah says. If you mention cabbage, you aser cabbage, you include asparagus, which is a subcategory of cabbage. Not clear that this refers to what we call asparagus today. Could be just any other type of cabbage which is out there. Now, if you aser asparagus, though, that's a subcategory. You're only answering that. You're not answering other types of cabbage. Somebody who answers grisen. Grisen are kernels of barley. So they include the kernels themselves, and they include the porridge, the thick, soupy, cooked mush you make out of the grisen. Now, Rabbi Yossi says that that thick thing is something else. He says that doesn't count as part of grisen, and therefore it's mutter. Now, what if somebody asers the thick soupy thing? So then everybody agrees that does not include grisen because that is a larger category. Now, that the thick thing itself could have a type of it which is made from garlic. So if somebody says he wants to aser the thick stuff, so does that include the garlic one or not? So the Tanna Kama says yes, and Rabbi Yossi says no. However, if he mentions just the garlic thing, it does not include the general type of thick thing at all. And if somebody answers lentils, does that include ashishim, which are lentils that are fried or made into a bread that has flour mixed within it? So there, again, in Machlokes Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi, Tanna Kama says those are included. That is a type of lentils. And Rabbi Yossi says no, it's a different thing. It's not included at all. However, if somebody mentions those things, then he definitely does not mean to include other types of lentils at all. All right, now the Mishnah goes to discuss pluralisms. So if somebody mentions wheat or wheats, plural. So wheat could refer to a single kernel, or it could refer to a loaf or bread or something you baked from wheat. It can't refer to a handful of wheat. If you want to say that, you would have to say wheats. You have to say chitin. So chita could refer to a kernel. It can't refer to or a baked object. It can't refer to plural kernels. It could refer to flour. Same thing applies to grisen. Grisen is a barley kernel. So if you say a gris, that's just one of them, could refer to a baked object or a single kernel. It can't refer to a handful. Those are called grisen. Now, there are three ways to eat these things. You could eat the flour, you could chew on the kernels, or you could eat an object that's baked from them. So if you use a singular language, chita or gris, that only refers to either an object that's made from it, a baked object. If you say chitin or grisin, that could refer to kernels, chewing up kernels. However, singular cannot refer to kernels, and plural cannot refer to a baked object. Therefore, somebody says both of them. So then, if he says chita chitin, so then he's not allowed to have not flour, not bread, and not kernels. Somebody says gris grisin, and he's not allowed to have any type of it. He's also not allowed to have it raw or cooked or any other way of serving it. Now, Rabbi Huda says if he says gris or chita, then he's allowed to chew them just the kernels, because that's plural, and he said only the singular. And the Gemara brings a brisa that explains it, as we've explained before. Rishon ben Gamliel says if somebody says chita singular, then he's not allowed to have something which is baked, but he is allowed to chew up a handful because it's plural, and he only said singular. However, if he says plural, chitim, then he is not allowed to chew up a bunch because that's plural. However, he's allowed to take a baked one. Same thing applies for chita and chitin. If he says both of them, however, then he's not allowed to chew them up, but he is allowed to have a baked object. Now, same thing applies to gris. So if he says gris, then he's not allowed to have something which is cooked from it. That's properly referred to in the singular. However, he's allowed to chew up a handful of it because that's not referred to in the singular. If he says grisin plural, then he's allowed to have a cooked dish of it, but he's not allowed to chew something up. He's not allowed to chew them up because that is the plural form. If he says both, gris grisin, that I'm eating, then he's not allowed to have it either cooked or chew it up raw. Both of them are included in the Isser and